When you think of the F-14 Tomcat and the F-4 Phantom, you think of two of the most legendary American fighter jets ever built. But here's the thing. They're long retired from U.S. service, basically museum pieces. So how on earth are these Cold War warriors still flying today? Let's get into the pretty surprising story of why they're still around.
It's a real head-scratcher, isn't it? I mean, we live in an age of stealth fighters and mind-blowing avionics. So how can hardware that's decades old possibly still be useful? We see them in movies, we see them in museums, but for some air forces out there, they're still frontline assets. And that really brings us to the core question here. What is it that makes these vintage planes so valuable that a modern military would keep them in the air? Well, the answer is probably not what you're thinking.
It all boils down to a pretty simple concept, really. Necessity, not greatness. This isn't some story about them being secret superweapons that are better than modern jets. Nope. The real reason is a lot more practical. The logic behind flying a fighter jet that's, 50 years old, it's actually way more straightforward than you'd imagine. For the countries that are still operating them, it just comes down to a simple, unavoidable reality. And this quote really just hits the nail on the head. It's not a choice they're making because of superior performance. It's a choice born from a total lack of alternatives. For these nations, an old jet in the sky is a whole lot better than no jet at all. Now, if you want to see this whole idea in action, there is no better case study than Iran. Seriously, their Air Force is one of the most fascinating and unique situations in modern aviation, and it's built almost entirely around these classic American-made jets. Yeah, Iran is the perfect example. Their Air Force, the IRIAF, is still flying both F-14 Tomcats and F-4 Phantoms. And these aren't just for air shows. They are considered absolutely critical for the country's defense. The bottom line is, until they can somehow get a modern replacement, these old jets are essential. But Iran isn't completely on an island here. The story of the F-4 Phantom, in particular, is still going in a couple of other countries. That said, it really does feel like we are watching the final chapter of this legendary aircraft service life play out. So besides Iran, a few other nations have hung on to the F-4. Turkey still has a limited number flying, while Greece is literally in the final stages of retiring its own fleet. It really just underscores the point that we are witnessing the absolute twilight of the Phantom's career. Okay, so let's pull all of this together. We can now see a really clear, overarching reason why these jets are still in service so long after they were designed. And honestly, this is a concept that applies to military hardware all across the globe, not just planes. Let's call it legacy aircraft dependency. It's a situation that's driven by geopolitics, by sanctions, by economics. When a country is cut off from buying modern replacements, it doesn't really have a choice, does it? It has to keep its older fleet flying through sheer ingenuity, by cannibalizing parts, and with just plain determination. So here's the crucial takeaway. When it comes down to it, for national defense on a tight budget or under sanctions, the best plane is the one you actually have. The ability to just put a fighter in the air, any fighter, can be way more important than waiting for a state-of-the-art jet you might never get. Simply put, availability often trumps capability. And all of this leaves us with one final, pretty thought-provoking question. For the pilots flying these machines and the nations that depend on them, it is a constant battle against time, against metal fatigue, and against the ever-advancing technology of their potential enemies. It makes you wonder, what happens when a nation's defense truly relies on a legacy of the past?